T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do this! Woohoo!
One, Adventure Bay. Go long, Marshall. I got it, I got it. A large crash could be heard soon thereafter. Looks like I really dropped the ball on that one. Laughter erupted from the area and into the clear, blue sky. Just a normal day in Adventure Bay, not a care in the world. Within Adventure Bay was an elite team that served all of the purposes of emergency services. Firefighting, EMT duties, construction, police, private investigation, garbage disposal, lifeguarding, aviation rescues, snow rescues, tracking, everything that a town would need. Now you might be expecting that it would be a team with more than 1,000 members with a very organized structure when it comes to each problem they have to face. Well, you would be wrong. This group is smaller. Not thousands, not hundreds, not even 50. A team consisting of less than 20 members. This would be a pretty small team in itself, if they were human at least. This team consisted of nearly 90% dogs. This team was affectionately, not to mention conveniently, called the PAW Patrol. 5. There was the first in command, Ryder. Being the only human on the team, it was obvious to most that he was the leader of the team. While he often spent most of his time leading his team on missions, he enjoyed playing games with his pups or simply playing video games on the same pad he would receive yelps for help. Meanwhile, there was Chase, a German Shepherd. It made sense that the German Shepherd of the team would become the police pup, as his breed was the most common to become police dogs. Being the first pup that Ryder would have recruited to the team, as well as being the responsible, calculated, stand-up pup that he is, was perfect for making him the next in command. Chase watched as a clumsy Dalmatian stood up, shaking loose blades of grass from his mostly white with black spotted fur. You okay over there, Marshall? The shepherd asked loudly. Marshall put a paw on his head, letting his sight settle from a slight dizziness. I'm good. Now it's your turn to go long. While Chase was very by the book, he slowly learned over time how to let loose a little outside of missions. This wasn't without the help of his best friend, Marshall. Goofy, clumsy, and funny were often the adjectives used for Marshall. Serving as the firefighter pup and as of recently, the EMT pup, Marshall the Dalmatian is most often to be considered as the third in command by Ryder. Marshall had always been unaware of his unofficial status, only Ryder and Chase knowing about it. Should the time come, Marshall would lead the remaining pups in a situation where the others would need it. Coming at ya, Chase. Marshall threw the frisbee at Chase, who quickly ran after it. Playing a game of tag with an English bulldog and a chocolate Labrador, a female cockapoo giggled happily as she was chased around by the chocolate Labrador. 5. You can't catch me, Zuma. She shouted back at him, picking up her pace. Skye, the aviation pup of the team, was the sole female pup on the team that lived at the lookout. Despite being the only female, Skye never had felt generally ostracized from her teammates. She was generally liked by the rest of the original team. She loved her life in the PAW Patrol and wouldn't change a thing. Well, maybe she would have changed that one time she got lost in that snowstorm and had been rescued by the very team she was on. That was pretty embarrassing. I'll bet my pup treats that I can, the chocolate lab replied. The aquatic rescue pup, Zuma, served as Skye's rival and friend. He always found himself getting into some sort of competition with the aviation pup. Whenever he wasn't trying to beat Skye in something, he liked surfing and hanging out with his best friend Rocky. Ironically, his best friend was the one pup on the team with aquaphobia, but that never stopped him from trying to get Rocky to break from this fear and general distaste for water. The Labrador suddenly slowed to a stop, looking to Skye's right. The cockapoo didn't notice, however, as she continued running. Plus, soon, a frisbee flew high over Skye's head. Chase was still chasing the frisbee, his sight trained on the disc. His training as a police pup helped immensely with chasing objects, but he still needed to work on watching his surroundings. This became apparent when he tripped over Skye, sending the two tumbling on the ground. Oh! The other pups winced, averting his gaze from the collision. Even Rocky, the sole mixed breed on the team, who was working on his garbage truck, looked over to watch the commotion. He chuckled faintly at the sight, knowing that this wouldn't be good for either of them. Rocky was always known as one of the most intelligent members of the PAW patrol because of his knowledge concerning technology and other things like that. He served as the pup that would fix whatever was broken around Adventure Bay with the help of whatever he would recycle and put into his seemingly bottomless supply of items. The mixed breed put his tools down and paid attention to the scene unfolding in front of him. 3. Oh. Both Chase and Skye groaned in unison, not noticing who they had run into. Standing up, the two finally looked at the other. Sorry. The two chorused. Plus. No, it was my fault. Both tried to rationalize, miming each other's movements. They both put a paw on their other forearm, rubbing it gently. What? No, I should have looked where I was going. They continued to talk in unison, as though they were the same pup. Realizing what was going on, a small smile cracked on their faces. Hey, stop doing that. Stop that. By this point, the other pups were getting a bit impatient with them. Zuma looked between Skye and Chase, wondering why they weren't a thing yet. The pups understood little concerning romance, but they were all completely sure that whatever was going on at that moment wasn't exactly normal friend stuff. 2. The other pups, with the exception of Marshall, Chase, and Skye, shared this sentiment. Marshall, unlike the three other pups who have long noticed Chase and Skye's awkward moments before him, was still unsure about the current status of his friends. He had no idea what was going on. Meanwhile, Chase could feel a burning sensation rising on his cheeks. The police pup wasn't sure of what to say or do in front of her. While he was used to the random fits of awkwardness when he interacted with Skye, he had trouble understanding them completely. A while ago, he assumed that he was sick, but as he grew, he came to realize that it simply didn't make any sense. Skye, on the other paw, looked up at the bigger pup with her usual kind smile. 4. The two pups didn't notice that they had been staring at the other for 2 straight minutes. The other pups didn't dare to interrupt and catch the awkward from Chase. Soon, the two burst into hysterics, falling onto the ground and laughing loudly. Knowing that the most awkward part of the interaction was over with, Zuma tentatively padded over to them. Skye was suddenly tagged by Zuma, successfully continuing their game. Chase, on the other paw, went to go grab the lost frisbee. Trotting over to Marshall, more cheerful than ever, Chase put the frisbee down in front of the dally. You seem happy, Chase. The shepherd only chuckled, glancing over at Skye, who was still playing tag with Zuma and Rubble. Marshall was confused that the shepherd wasn't replying. Chase continued to watch the 3 pups play, his tail wagging lightly. As though he were in some kind of trance, the shepherd remained quiet. The dally slowly leaned over to his best friend's ear. Chase. Ow. What, Marshall? Chase snapped his head over to Marshall, who only had a raised eyebrow. What had you in a daze like that? Marshall questioned. It was like you were a statue. The shepherd's eyes bulged. He wasn't going to just tell the dally what he was looking at for so long. There was no way. I was. Suddenly, the two's pup tags chimed with a faint glow of their signature color, Paw Patrol, to the lookout. Saved by the bell. Chase exhaled faintly, looking at Marshall with more confidence in his eyes. Come on, Ryder needs us. ED for action, Ryder, sir. Chase exclaimed confidently as he stood in the middle of the group lineup. Thanks for coming so quickly, pups. We have an emergency. Ryder told the group. Captain Turbot was on the flounder when he hit a rock, making a hole in it. Poor Captain. Is he okay? He's all right, we just need to get there as quickly as possible. The boy explained. Skye, I'll need you to get the captain and pull him out. This hole is pretty big, bigger than any other hole in the past, so there's a good chance that it could sink. Let's take to the skies. The cockapoo exclaimed, doing one of her many signature flips. Rocky, I'm going to need you to repair the ship when it's at shore. Green means go. And Zuma, you're going to be in charge of getting the flounder back to shore. Ready, set, get wet. Marshall, be ready to be dispatched later to check for injuries. I'm ready for a rough rescue. Ryder pumped his fist into the air. All right, PAW Patrol is on a roll. Dashing past the pups, Ryder heard the familiar howls from his pups. Chase and Marshall watched as Skye, Rocky and Zuma went down the slide, soon returning to the area in front of the big screen. Rubble quickly pulled out a stash of pup treats from a hiding place and walked over to sit behind Chase and Marshall. 3. The Dalmatian turned around at the faint sound of chewing, looking at Rubble with confusion. Where'd you get those treats from so fast? It's a secret? The bulldog grinned sheepishly. Don't tell me you have a stash up here too? Chase turned around as well, raising an eyebrow. The police pup was always the best at sniffing things out, in all aspects of the phrase. Chase and Rubble were the only ones who knew about the stashes of food the bulldog had around the lookout. 1. The German Shepherd had always had a soft spot for Rubble, as he saw the bulldog as the little brother he never had. Because of this, he decided to turn the other way, just this once. This was on the condition that Rubble couldn't take too much to the point where the other pups got less. Rubble, the youngest of the main 6 members in the PAW Patrol, often found himself chasing the backs of the 2 most reliable members of the team. This never put him down, but he did acknowledge the fact that he had much more to learn before he was anywhere near Chase and Marshall's level. He remembered the time he was saved by the PAW Patrol, swearing that he would be the one doing the saving one day. Marshall munched on popcorn, which had been placed on the floor in front of him. The mission had gotten pretty perilous over the course of the mission. It had begun to storm while Skye was dropping off Captain Turbot, resulting in a buildup of sand on the beach because of the turbulent waves. Ryder even had to dispatch Rubble to help them out, leaving the Dalian Shepherd to watch the mission unfold. Chase was intently watching the screen beside Marshall, his eyes glued to the large screen in front of them. He whimpered occasionally as he watched them struggle, more specifically, Skye. The shepherd seemed not to care as much about Captain Turbot, who was being thrown around because of the harsh winds. Skye struggled to fly as the helicopter was thrown to the right. A cold sweat began to seep out of her skin and through the fur on her forehead as she let out a shaky exhale. Despite being adept to flying through harsh winds, things weren't as easy when there was somebody strapped to the harness below. This troublesome turbulence is making us tumble, Skye. Turbot shouted up at her, holding on tight to the harness around his waist. I know. The cockapoo replied, don't worry. I've got this. Skye tugged harshly on the steering wheel of the helicopter. She could feel her left forepaw shoot with a numb pain as she had to tilt it in an uncomfortable position in order to stabilize the helicopter. What she didn't know, however, was that this sent her careening towards the lighthouse. Turbot seemed to notice before she did, covering his glasses. 1. Tell Wally I love him. 4. Dodge it, Skye. Chase screamed at the screen, his eyes widening. Thinking the same as Chase, Ryder quickly ordered her to do just that, alerting her attention. Skye quickly avoided the top of the lighthouse. Finding the correct place, Skye was finally able to put Captain Turbot down. Yes. Chase, Marshall and Rubble exclaimed in unison. Chase suddenly hugged Marshall, she's okay. Skye's okay. 2. Marshall couldn't help but chuckle at this. Chase, the super serious by the rules second in command of the PAW patrol, giggling like a newborn pup while hopping up and down. Yeah, it's Skye. The Dally chuckled, she knows what she's doing. Chase suddenly stopped, his face going blank. He let Marshall go before calmly clearing his throat. Yeah, of course. Knew she could do it. Of course you did, Chase. Suddenly, Marshall's pup tag lit up its familiar red color. Marshall, I need you to come to shore. We're bringing Captain Turbot to check him for injuries. Plus, I'm ready for a... Wait, Marshall. Chase looked at the Dally. You did not just interrupt my call-out. 5. Sorry, but I was thinking if I could come with? The shepherd smiled nervously. The Dally raised an eyebrow. Sure, but why? Chase thought for a moment. It's my job as the second in command to make sure everything's all right after that harsh sea storm. Marshall smirked at him, who only looked away with an obviously suspicious grin. The Dally had to try his hardest to not burst out laughing in front of the police pup. He found it extremely amusing to watch Chase be interrogated and squirm under pressure for once. Marshall had always been one of the worst liars on the team, so he wasn't much for being interrogated. Interrogating the sole pup who's best at interrogating was always a plus. 2. Before he could question further, his pup tag glowed once again. Marshall? Don't worry, Ryder. Marshall began running to the slide. Marshall and Chase are on the woo-wah. Marshall slipped and fell down the slide, followed by Chase, who seemed a lot more excited for this mission. Marshall and Chase? Ryder put a finger on his chin. Well, I guess 4 paws are better than 2. 2. Marshall is on the case. Marshall's ambulance pulled up to the beach next to the bay, just in time to spot Zuma and Ryder arrive with the flounder. Chase smiled at his owner, but seemed to be a bit confused. The shepherd looked around for a little while as Ryder stepped onto shore to guide the flounder onto the beach. It appeared as though he was looking for something. Or someone. Chase, Marshall. Zuma grinned, running over after bringing the flounder to shore. You're just in time, dudes. Just in time? What do you mean? Marshall went to climb out of his seat before landing on the ground face first. I'm good. Turbot was pretty banged up during the storm. The chocolate lab explained with his usual, carefree stride, but nothing that a bit of TLC from our EMT dude can't fix. I'll try my best and forget the Skye. Chase exclaimed, unintentionally cutting his best friend off. Maybe next time. The Dally smiled, slightly irritated. 4. The German Shepherd howled with excitement as he watched a familiar helicopter gently set Turbot down on the ground. The man was a bit dizzy from all of the flying, stumbling over to Marshall. "Shucks. That strict storm really sent me for a spin," Turbot exclaimed, sitting down on the sand in front of Marshall. "Marshall, check Captain Turbot for any injuries, and dress them accordingly," Ryder shouted over the whirring helicopter blades approaching steadily. Marshall nodded in the affirmative as Chase rushed past him. Ryder, Rocky, and Zuma watched in confusion, knowing that Chase was never officially dispatched. Skye, meanwhile, didn't notice the quick shepherd running at her until he was right next to her. "Skye, are you okay?" Chase asked, abundant worry in his hazel eyes. "Yeah, I'm fine now." The cockapoo yelped the moment she tried to place her left forepaw on the ground. Skye closed her eyes for a quick moment. Her eyes then shot open. She probed her mind to find a reason as to why her paw hurt like that. Her mind then clicked. The storm. While she was navigating through it, she had to pull on the steering as hard as she could. "Your paw." The shepherd instantly noticed what was wrong. What happened to it? "I must have bent it in a weird way while steering." Skye gave him a gentle smile to mask the pain. "I'll go get looked at by Marshall." She attempted to walk on 3 legs, but immediately fell onto Chase's back, which was lowered close to the ground. The shepherd soon stood back up, lifting her up. "You're not walking like that. I'll carry you." 4. The cockapoo's eyes widened a bit. "No, you don't have to." Skye. Thanks, Chase." Skye smiled at him, a faint blush rising beneath her fur. 1. Skye had always felt pretty partial to Chase. Ever since she joined the PAW patrol, she couldn't help but notice how much the police pup would put on his shoulders, even if it meant maturing a lot faster than the rest of the pups. For years, she would observe the way he acted on missions compared to the way he acted outside of missions. She, along with Marshall, knew how hard it was for him to let loose. Chase slowly walked them toward Marshall. He was unaware of how slow he was going. Despite the potential severity of Skye's injury, he couldn't help but to start out with a slower walk. He wanted the moment to last just a bit longer. Realizing how potentially selfish this was, he picked up the pace. Marshall finished up dressing Turbot's thankfully minor injuries. Wiping his forehead, the Dally turned to look over at Chase, who was cheerfully conversing with a familiar cockapoo on his back. The Dally raised an eyebrow at this, humming to himself in intrigue. He was, by a long shot, the most goofy pup on the team, but he was by no means stupid. Apparently, neither was Zuma. "You see what I'm seeing, dude?" The chocolate lab asked, sitting next to Marshall. Marshall nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I do." Zuma then leaned over to whisper in Marshall's ear, "Meet me at Rocky's pup house at 6 sharp. Don't be late, dude." Trotting away as though nothing happened, Zuma left Marshall standing there in confusion. The Dally then shook his head and prepared for his next patient. Just 1 more hour until Zuma's meetup time. Marshall thought, watching a new episode of Apollo the Super Pup with Rubble, Rocky, and Skye. His gaze switched over to Rocky, who was intently watching the show. He knew that the mixed breed was close with Zuma, so if anyone knew what was up, it would be the recycling pup. The Dally stood up, walking away from the television. He needed to investigate. He wasn't the super spy on the team, but he could investigate as best as he could. Super Spy Marshall is on the case. 5. First things first, he needed to find Chase. And if nothing worked there, he would have to talk with Rocky. He knew that Zuma wasn't going to be of any help, as he was tight-lipped the second they got back to the lookout a few hours prior. Skye and Rubble weren't really applicable in this situation, as Skye seemed to be the topic, and Rubble, well, was Rubble. A good friend, but bad at things like this. Marshall smiled to himself as he thought these details over. He was really thinking like a super spy now. Now where's Chase? The Dally spoke to himself. I can go again, Ryder, sir. Marshall's ears twitched. What? Ready, Chase? There was a brief silence. Timer is set, go. Walking out of the sliding doors, Marshall peeked out into the field area. He could see Chase running as fast he could on a makeshift course. He saw Ryder holding a timer in his right hand while his left was resting in his pocket. The Dally was instantly able to recognize that Chase was in mission mode. The shepherd's ears were flattened against his head as he speedily dashed through the course. For a moment, Marshall could have sworn that Chase had somehow accessed his superpowers for a moment, as he became a blur as he ran around the course. Dashing right past Ryder, the boy stopped the timer and smiled brightly. You just beat your record by 5 seconds. Chase, out of mission mode once again, smiled brightly as he took a moment to catch his breath. I think that's enough post-mission training for you today, Chase. Ryder laughed. Go and have some fun with the other pups. He panted, letting himself rest on the grass. Okay, Ryder, sir. Ryder returned to the lookout, passing by Marshall. The Dally decided to tag in, running over to his best friend. Hey Chase, whoa. Marshall tripped over one of his feet, tumbling towards the shepherd. Landing on his face in front of Chase, he looked up to see him. I'm good. Hey Marshall, what's up? I wanted to ask you something. Shoot. What's the deal with you and Skye? He cut to the chase. You always act weird when she's involved, but ever since bumping into each other this morning, it's been more, if you know what I mean. 2. Caught. That was the first thing running through Chase's mind. Despite trying to act cool about it in front of the other pups, he knew that when it came to Skye, composure was completely out of the question. Marshall was his closest friend out of all of the pups. He knew that any falter in composure or attitude would instantly alert him, so he needed to be tactful about this. Yes, cool, calm, and collected. He needed his mission mode. He knew how to be serious at a flick of a switch. There was no way that he couldn't do it now. All he had to do was act like he was on a mission. W what? W who's Skye? 10. Smooth move, dingus. 3. So there is something going on. The Dally pointed an accusatory paw at the shepherd. I have no idea what you're talking about, Marshall. What? Marshall grinned. You were so worried for her during the mission. As the second in command, it is my responsibility to care for the well-being of my teammates and… Cut the crap, Chase. The Dally pushed him playfully. I know you. Maybe even better than you do. You never act like this when asked about normal stuff. I know that. The police pup broke out into a bit of a sweat. So… what's going on? Skye and I are strictly friends. Nothing more. With that, Chase walked away from Marshall. But Marshall had all that he needed. He didn't have an outright confession, but he could worry about that later. For now, he could just worry about the meeting with Zuma. Speaking of, how long was he out here talking to Chase anyways? Suddenly, a paw went over Marshall's mouth. He tried to yelp for help, but before he knew it, a duffel bag was going over his head and his whole body. It happened so quickly, he barely had time to react. Was he being kidnapped? Pup-napped? He could feel multiple paws pick him up and carry him in an unknown direction. Marshall continued to struggle and shout, but his mouth was covered once again, followed by a shushing noise. As they moved, the footsteps on the grass turned into a more metallic noise as his pup-nappers sat him down on a soft cushion. The duffel bag was taken off of Marshall's face, letting his screams finally be heard. Help! Help! I'm yelping for help. Why isn't anyone coming? 5. Looking around, he noticed that he was in a dark place. The only thing he could see were a few dark figures in front of him. Because they're all inside, Marshall. A deep, distorted voice spoke. How do you know my name? Where am I? Who are you? Robodog, lights. He was finally allowed to see, revealing 3 familiar faces. Zuma, Rocky, and Rubble, the latter of the 3 holding an electronic microphone to his mouth. Huh? You guys? Glad you could make it, dude. Zuma gave the Dally a friendly smile. Glad I could make it? Marshall asked loudly. I had no choice, you put me in a bag. I thought you said to meet at Rocky's pup house. That was the first place that came to mind. Rocky's pup house is the first place that came to mind. The Dally paused. Rubble? I didn't know about that. Zuma just said he gave you an excuse. Zuma looked between Marshall and Rubble. What about it? Marshall and Rubble looked at both Rocky and Zuma, suspicion rising on their faces. The chocolate lab nearly choked on his own spit, realizing what they were potentially getting at. Not like that. 2. We don't play on that side of the fence. Rocky muttered. Sure. Marshall and Rubble rolled their eyes, exchanging a glance. Forget that. Zuma shouted at the 2, we have to get this over with before Wider, or worse, Chase and Skye, realize that we're gone. Careful, Zuma. Marshall stifled a chuckle. You know your speech impediment comes back when you get nervous. Leave him alone. We need to get down to business. Rocky defended his best friend. We were supposed to get Marshall inducted into Team Skase. 3. Where are we, even? Marshall looked around. Rubble took a moment to look out the window to see if they were being watched, the PAW patroller. Now cut the lights, Robodog. The lights slowly dimmed before turning off. Brother Rocky, Brother Rubble. Zuma looked between them. And you, Marshall. We dudes have assembled here in our secret hideout, the PAW patroller, for one thing and one thing only. Drama. Rocky and Rubble exclaimed cheerfully, startling the Dally. But more specifically, for love. Zuma clenched his paw. We are Team Skase, and we wanted you to join us. The way you guys are calling each other brothers. Marshall looked for an exit. I know we're the PAW patrol and consider each other family, but is this a cult thing? Tell me this isn't a cult thing. 6. Relax, dude. Zuma chuckled. It's more of a joke thing. You kidnapped me. We couldn't trust you to not spill everything before we even talked to you. Rocky chimed in. You kinda have a big mouth. And Rubble doesn't? Marshall pointed at the youngest pup in the vehicle. Zuma put a paw on Rubble's head. He's the best double agent we could ever ask for. People often underestimate this slick dude because he's super young and childish. We kind of did too until Rubble found out about Team Skase. The chocolate lab chuckled faintly. They would expect me to do something like that because I'm the best Casanova pup out there. They would expect the lady's pup to be involved with this. And guy's pup too. Marshall whispered to Rubble, who stifled a laugh. 2. What was that? Nothing, continue. Zuma shot the 2 a glare, and they would have expected me to pull Rocky into it too because he's my best friend. But Rubble? Nah. They think too highly of him for that. And that was their blunder. Rubble chimed in. Zuma and Rubble gave the other a quick high five. So let me get this straight, make sure I'm caught up. Marshall looked at the three pups. You three started a team dedicated to getting Skye and Chase together. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of. Without me? 4. Huh? I thought I was in this alone. Marshall cried, hugging the three pups. I have so many thoughts and theories and questions. It's okay, dude. Zuma laughed, putting his head. You're with us now, Brother Marshall. It's going to be okay. 1. So when did you three start suspecting? Rocky broke the group hug. I thought you'd never ask. Rocky brought out a small laptop before setting it down in front of the three. He scrolled through some files before getting to a file named Skase. He typed something down before pulling up a video. Exhibit A. One of the 1,000 Chicoletta rescues. 2. Skye's okay. She's okay. Ah. You were worried. What? And no, I'm just glad that Chicoletta is okay. Thanks, Chase, that's very sweet. Zuma chimed in. That's when I started suspecting something. Now for Exhibit B. Rocky went on to another video, Friendship Day. Zuma and Rubble gasped loudly. Friendship Day? Marshall was a bit confused. The day dedicated to platonic relationships? Rocky glared at the screen. Precisely. The quartet of pups watched the video play. Marshall soon gasped loudly as he saw the now iconic footage of Skye nuzzling against Chase's chest. After the footage switched, Rocky paused the video. I think we've witnessed enough. I'm 90% sure that his eyes weren't the only things bulging. Zuma, gross. Marshall gagged. Seriously, Zuma? Rocky asked between roars of laughter. Meanwhile, Rubble was confused by the joke. Despite knowing things about romance that most wouldn't expect him to know, he still didn't know all the nitty-gritty details. None of the pups did, but at least Marshall, Zuma, and Rocky, along with Chase and Skye, had to be given a light version of the talk after the 5 saw 2 wild wolves in the forest. Wrestling. The bulldog watched as the 3 remained in hysterics, their childish natures shining through in their fullest. Rubble blinked twice. I don't get it.